Greetings and welcome to a journey through Papua New Guinea history. These videos are for people who are interested in the history of Papua New Guinea. This is episode 1 and it is about the arrival of the first Papua New Guinea people. My name is Kemelo Gima and I will be introducing the stories. They are about interesting things that happened before our country became independent in 1975. We will start by looking back thousands of years to our ancient history. Our ancient history is sometimes called prehistory because it was before anyone knew how to write down what happened so it would be remembered. In this first episode, we will try to answer a question that many people have asked. The question is, where did the people of Papua New Guinea come from? How and when did the first people come to our part of the world? I hope you find this story as interesting as I do.
The story of where Papua New Guinea people came from begins around 60,000 years ago. This was about the time modern humans began moving out of Africa and gradually made their way across the world. This map roughly shows the migration routes of these early people, but the shape of the continents and islands look quite different than they appear on this familiar map. The world was much colder. There was more ice and sea levels were much lower. As you can see in this map, New Guinea, Australia and Tasmania were actually joined together as one large continent, which was called Sahul. To the northwest of Sahul, many of the islands of Southeast Asia were also joined together and were part of the Asian mainland. This great landmass was known as Sunda. Between these two continents was a chain of islands in the middle of the ocean, in an area known as Wallachia. The little evidence that we have shows that early humans travelled through Sunda and then across the islands of Wallachia to reach New Guinea and Australia. This map shows the widest sea crossing humans had to make. It is a deep ocean trench called the Wallace Line. It is named after Alfred Wallace, a British naturalist and explorer, who noticed there was a big difference between animals living on the Asian side of the line compared to animals on the New Guinea and Australian side. The deep sea trench along this line existed even during the Ice Ages, when sea levels were lower, and prevented many Asian land animals, like tigers, elephants and monkeys, from crossing into our part of the world. By the same token, animals like kangaroos and the platypus could not cross into Asia. But here's where it gets really interesting. To reach New Guinea and Australia, these early people had to cross the Wallace Line. This meant they had to cross at least 100 kilometres of open water. That's a long sea journey, even by today's standards. Now, there's been a lot of debate about how these early people managed to make such a long sea journey. How did they do it? Did they set out on purpose, using rafts or some other kind of early watercraft? Perhaps they came on bamboo rafts, like this one carrying people of Torres Strait in 1906. The question has been asked, did they end up in New Guinea by accident, maybe carried there by storms or ocean currents? In fact, most experts believe that people deliberately set out to make these crossings. They say this wasn't just one or two people getting lost at sea. They say many people must have crossed, with groups bringing supplies, tools, and knowledge. They think that a certain amount of planning and cooperation would have been needed, and for people to make this sea crossing, they would have needed at least some understanding of how to sail on the sea. Once people arrived in New Guinea, some kept moving. They travelled along the north coast, and before long some even explored inland and went up the mountains. In fact, at the mission station you can see here, about 2,000 metres above sea level, in Avine Valley of the Owen Stanley Range, an amazing discovery was made. Here, archaeologists dug up the remains of plants and some stone tools that were found to be 49,000 years old. This proved that people were exploring the Owen Stanley Range, not far north of where Port Moresby is today, not long after they arrived in New Guinea. Early humans didn't stay long in the Owen Stanley Range. It wasn't until later that people made their homes in the highlands. This map, by archaeologist Glenn Summerhays, shows some of the earliest archaeological sites, where evidence has been found of early human occupation. On the Huon Peninsula, marked with the red flag, archaeologist Les Grube discovered a series of ancient terraces containing stone tools and other artefacts. These discoveries show people were living here more than 40,000 years ago. This photograph shows the terraces on the Huon Peninsula, where archaeologists have found evidence of early human settlement. Some early people in New Guinea were hunting larger animals that are now extinct, having died out thousands of years ago. Some were like the ones shown in this picture that used to roam in New Guinea. One of the earliest examples of transporting animals was with the cuscus, a type of tree-dwelling marsupial, which was carried from mainland New Guinea all the way to New Ireland, possibly to breed as a food source. Archaeologists have shown that people crossed from the mainland to the islands of New Britain and New Ireland about 44,000 years ago. People lived in New Ireland for thousands of years before making the 180-kilometre journey to Buka. From Buka, they eventually made their way right through Bougainville, which was then connected to Buka to make a single island. At the same time, people started trading obsidian. Obsidian is formed when a certain kind of volcanic lava rapidly cools, turning it into a kind of volcanic glass. It is hard and brittle. Obsidian was used for making tools and weapons, such as the tips of these spears. In one example, obsidian from New Britain was transported over 300 kilometres to New Ireland. To do this, people must have developed organised networks for exchanging goods. One of the biggest breakthroughs in this period was when early sailors found Marnus Island, which you can see at the top of the map. The evidence shows that they reached there about 20,000 years ago. Now, this was no small achievement. To reach Marnus from mainland New Guinea, or from other islands, the early sailors had to travel about 200 kilometres across the sea. For much of such a journey, they would not have been able to see land. That's a very impressive crossing so many thousands of years ago. Historians and archaeologists believe this was one of the greatest achievements in ancient seamanship anywhere in the world. We know that after the discovery of Marnus, boats continued sailing between there and the mainland. As shown on this map, by around 23,000 years ago, many people had settled in new areas. More than just hunter-gatherers, they were transporting goods to where they were needed and creating larger trade networks. The population grew, and as you can see on the map, in the highlands and on several islands, new settlements popped up in several places. Then about 11 or 12,000 years ago, there were even bigger changes when the world's ice began to melt. The last ice age had ended and the world became much warmer. Sea levels rose and glaciers melted in the New Guinea highlands. As the ice melted and the seas rose, New Guinea was cut off from Australia when the rising ocean filled Torres Strait. Coastlines changed their shape, and the islands of Melanesia began to look like they do today. At about the same time, New Guineans began to expand their trade networks even further. Obsidian and stone tools from New Britain and Marnus were transported over 1,000 kilometres to West New Guinea. New Guinean animals, like wallabies, bandicoots and cuscus, were taken from New Britain as far as East Timor and Indonesia. People were trading living animals over massive distances. With the warmer climate, the highlands became more comfortable for people to live in. Forests expanded and trees began to grow much higher up the mountains, from 2,000 to about 4,000 metres above sea level. Land where nothing would grow became rich and fertile. These favourable changes brought on a revolution. It was the beginning of farming in New Guinea. And this brings us to a place in the highlands called Cook, one of the most important archaeological sites in Papua New Guinea. In 1966, workers clearing and digging land for tea and coffee plantations close to Mount Hagen found evidence of ancient human activity. Archaeologists led by Professor Jack Golson of the Australian National University came, and they were amazed by what they found. They uncovered ancient irrigation ditches, proof that the people of Cook had developed farming techniques dating as far back as 10,000 years ago. This meant that people in New Guinea were amongst the earliest farmers in the world. As this map shows, they were farming at the same time as other ancient agricultural societies in China, North, Central and South America, and the Fertile Crescent of the Middle East. You can find out all about Cook in a book called 10,000 Years of Cultivation at Cook Swamp in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. This book is available to read free online. In 2008, UNESCO officially granted the Cook agricultural site heritage status. This places Cook on an equal footing with places like the Great Wall of China, the Great Barrier Reef, and the Pyramids of Giza in Egypt.
That is the story so far about when the first people came to New Guinea. There is still more to tell. The next episode, episode 2, is about the arrival in New Guinea of a new group of people known as the Austronesians. It was the beginning of a new era in the ancient past, when another great wave of people left Asia and found their way to New Guinea. I look forward to seeing you then.